Okay. Om Gyanatimmirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamahim Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Uttaparakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Krishna Bharan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Vandeham Sri Ramakrishna Bhayacharana Sukho Sukaro Paramanando Sundaro Subalapriyo Nama Cintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Suddha Nityam Tobinatvan Namanaminam Sri Gauriya Vaishnava Guru Parampara ki jai Sri Guru Varga ki jai Sri Param Guru ki jai Sri Guru Dev ki jai Gaur Haribol. Okay, welcome everybody. Let's see who came on. Carolina, welcome. And Veer, I'm not sure who that is, but welcome anyway. Oh, and Haripriya, Sarada. Wow, we have a good group here today. Let's go back to here and quickly pin this guy. Okay, so today we are going to start with the third chapter of Harinama Cintamani, which is all about Namabas. And the chapter starts with Mahaprabhu asking Haridas Thakur to Guru Maharaj just stepped in. A little break here. Mahaprabhu just asked Haridas Thakur to explain Namabas, and he makes the point that by really understanding Namabas, we can chant the pure name, like understand the pure name based on that understanding of Namabas, and really kind of like understanding what's what. And Mahaprabhu starts explaining how Shudhanam is like this brilliant sun that is self-luminous and basically lights up everything, but that there are some clouds and some mist that can block that sunshine. And basically the idea is that Namabas is the same as like when the light comes through clouds or mist, and it's kind of diffused. And then based on like how thick that cloud covering is, it's dimmer and dimmer, right? And then the worst kind of light is the reflected light. For example, if there's a pool of water on the ground, the actual light is reflected from another object instead of coming to us directly, even though it would come through the clouds. It actually reflects off of some other object. Of course, I'll explain what all those things mean in terms of Namabas, but it's a very, very nice example. And the same example is, of course, given, I think, by Haridas Thakur as well I can't exactly remember where, but there's this whole discussion about the glories of the holy name, and Haridas Thakur gives the same example. And this example for me is very kind of personally important, because when I joined Audarya many years ago, and it was really tough for me in the beginning. I struggled a lot, but I never wanted to, like, I guess, bother Guru Maharaj with my, tweak outs and stuff. And I would just kind of push forward without saying anything. But then finally at one point, within maybe the first 4 months or 5 months or something, I came to a point where I couldn't deal with my mind anymore. And so then I like timidly went up to his room, actually in this room where I'm right now. He was sitting on the couch right there. And I came up and I was like, Guru Maharaj, I'm melting, I'm melting down here. And I like, poured out like, oh, it's so hard and this and that and all these problems in my mind and whatever, the tweak out was. I can't even remember what the details were. And then he said something like, well, you have to remember that the sun actually is never covered. There's only the clouds, they cover your consciousness, but the actual sun is never covered. And it was like this extremely simple thing that he said to me. But it was one of those things, I guess it's those things when the Chaitya Guru, or the kind of like the internal manifestation of the Guru, like speaks to you through your Guru. And it's like, it can be the simplest thing and it just completely like clears everything out. And that was my experience. He said those very simple things just about how, you might be under the clouds, but the sun is never obstructed by anything. It's like completely in your mind. And I remember the rest of the day, I was just like on a cloud instead of under the cloud, right? Cloud 9. And it was a very profound experience for me, because it was this really strong, quick, actual realization of how whatever happens in my mind, it doesn't change the absolute truth in any way, or the fact that the absolute truth is constantly shining on us, whether we act badly or not. It's just that we cover ourselves with this like ball of cloud, and we want to be inside of that cloud and that mist, and that really is the only problem. Because like when the mind starts tweaking out, sometimes you start thinking like, oh, maybe this is not true, like that's like the idea that there is no sun actually, there's only darkness and we're stuck in darkness. And then the mind goes and goes and goes like that. And probably I was going through something like that, because his very simple thing of like the sun never going out was like, oh, right, that's the sambandha, what the relationship of different things are to each other. Like it's in my head, it's not in the environment. And so Bhaktivinoda, he specifically says that he compares ignorance. He says there's two things that block us from chanting the pure name, and it's ignorance and anarthas. And so he compares ignorance to mist and anarthas to clouds. And he doesn't make this connection, but I'm assuming what he's saying there also is that when mist condenses, it turns into clouds, right? So when the ignorance gets condensed, it basically turns into anarthas in our hearts. And then Bhaktivinoda, I forgot to say one thing about this whole cloud thing. I'm just gonna say one more thing, and that is that if you haven't been to Audarya, we're like on this hilltop, right? And if you want to get out of Audarya, you have to drive down these like kind of like country roads down to the valley. It's called the Anderson Valley. And so bigger highway, well, it's not in a highway, it's called a highway. This one road, if you want to get out of Anderson Valley and Philo, it's all the way at the bottom in the Anderson Valley. But when the mist and the fog comes in the night, it always like gets stuck in the valley, and we're like above it. And like, so every time I used to deliver milk to the ISKCON temple in Silicon Valley. So every Sunday I would drive down. It was amazing. Like every morning, it was the perfect like cloudless, sunny morning here. And then I would start descending down to the valley of material existence. And, the mist would come, and then this thick clouds. And when I was down in the valley, it was like completely overcast. And I don't know, it was always like a beautiful thing to come down and see you'd be above the clouds. And so that's the best, I guess, I can do at this point, to like imagining some very indirect way of what it's like to be above your material conditioning, is that I had this certain feeling every time I would drive down. I was like, yes, like I'm not, conditioned by these clouds or whatever. I can't quite catch what I'm trying to say here, but maybe you can get the mental image of like driving down these beautiful hills and you can see this fog and these clouds underneath, and you kind of, that you're above that or whatever. So anyway, back to this idea that ignorance is mist and anarthas are clouds. Then Haridas starts explaining how he starts breaking down these two different categories. Like first, he takes ignorance, breaks it into three categories, and then he looks at anarthas and breaks that into three categories. And that's interesting that he breaks them into three categories because Shamananda was talking about anarthas in his first class, was it a couple of days ago? And like the way Shamananda explained it, that's, I think, the more traditional way of breaking it down. There's actually 4 different categories of anarthas. But anyway, we'll go with Bhaktivinoda on this one, the way he explains it here. So anyway, let's see what he says. So the 3 types of ignorance are ignorance concerning the holy name, of the nature of the holy name, and then ignorance concerning the position of Krishna and his personality and his position in the bigger scheme of things. And then the last type of ignorance is the ignorance concerning the spirit soul, or the Atma, who we are. So that's ignorance. And then 3 types of anarthas are thirst for material objects, which is, I forget the Sanskrit, something Trishna. Maybe Shamananda can pitch in. Weakness of heart, which is Hridaya Durbalya, something like that. And then offense, aparad. So 3 types of anarthas: thirst for material objects, weakness of heart, and offense. And so then first, Haridas starts explaining, like, okay, so we have ignorance, we have anarthas. What are we going to do with that? We, of course, as devotees, we want to chant Shudhanam. Like, that's the whole goal of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, actually. You can just distill the whole tradition, whole culture, whole philosophy to that one thing. We want to chant Shudhanam. That is the core, the sum total of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, because everything comes from the name, right? So then, like, okay, our first obstacle is ignorance. So what do we do with that? And really, it seems so simple. It's just, we need sambandha gyan. We have to, first of all, understand what's what. And we talked about this in the first class. The first chapter is all about getting your bearings kind of in the metaphysical structure or orientation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. But very important points made by Haridas. He says that you have to know, first of all, Krishna is God. He's completely independent, all these things. We are infinitesimal spiritual beings we're like completely connected to God in a way that we could never be separate from him, but yet we have our own personality in relation to him, in relation to Svarup Shakti. And how, the matter is non-conscious, but it's a manifestation of Krishna's Shakti at the same time. So basically, it's like the 3 main topics of the Vedas or the scriptures is the Brahman or Bhagavan, Jiva, and Maya. And so we have to know all that. But then Haridas makes a very important point. That's not enough in itself. Like, it has to be realized knowledge if you really want to get beyond your ignorance. I mean, it's an obvious point, but easy to forget that, like, just knowing theoretically that Krishna is God, if that doesn't translate into this deep, sincere, honest, like spontaneous faith, you're actually not. And pick something in the world that seems like a nice thing and it seems like you have faith in that thing when you say, yes, I believe that Krishna is God. But the thing is, there's kind of 2 levels of being a devotee. One level is that it is a form of upadhi, basically, which means like a designation, material designation. So you can be, that's what we are, because we're mostly Kanishta Adhikaris. So we are devotees a lot of times on that level, that for us, it's a designation in the world. I like devotees, and that's good. You have to start from there, but it's also important to understand that there's 2 levels to being a devotee, or more than, there's actually 3, because there's Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttama. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we identify as the packaging of a devotee in this world. And so it's still like, in a way, world-centric. It's like, as a person in this world, I want to be a devotee, and that's a great start. But if you really have that spontaneous Braja Bhakti in your heart, that's Niropati. That's completely beyond thinking that you are a devotee in this world. You actually think you're this like worm in stool instead. Which I guess that's, you could say that kind of humility is another sign or another indication of the fact that you have no upadis, because you don't even think that you're a devotee or a worm, the most disgusting, lowest thing you can. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point that if it's not realized knowledge, our understanding of what a devotee is always tied to this world, and it's on some level it's tied to this world, and it's on some level tied to our material psychology and psychophysical experience. And specifically, Harinama says that you'll stay on the Namabas stage. You can't go beyond it without having the realized Sambandha Gyan. But then he makes sure that he emphasizes the fact that even Namabas is extremely auspicious in itself, because it is, if it's done right, I'll show you a chart of how this Namabas breaks down. But when it's the right kind of Namabas that's based on faith in Krishna, it is the actual light of the Shudhanam, but it's a diffused form of that Shudhanam, the light of the Shudhanam. So that's why we might be chanting, but you once and you'll be liberated, and everything will go away. All inauspicious things will go away, and we're chanting. We're like, yeah, not exactly happening here. But the thing is, it's the level of the diffusion or the level of the thickness of the clouds that is the defining factor of how much taste you're getting. But so then to showcase how Namabas is extremely auspicious, even actually when it's totally offensive, like even the Namabas that the Mayavadis chant is extremely auspicious on a certain level. And it really is like the chief pious activity if you look at it from that angle. Like Shubha Karma, we talked about that. If you were listening in on my Jaiva Dharma talks, there was that one class about different types of karma. And so Shubha Karma is like this most auspicious type of activity. And so Haridas makes the point that Namabas is the best form of Shubha Karma. And that might be a little, strange, might sound a little strange, because it sounds like bhakti is a karmic activity, but that's not what he's talking about. The effects of Namabas is the best kind of karma, or you get the best kind of result from. So then Haridas goes on to list all these amazing effects of Namabas. And just imagine yourself, okay, like watching TV or something. It's, the commercial channel where they only show TV commercials. And so then this thing comes on, you don't know what it is. It says Harinam, and then it starts, how the voice comes and they start listing all these amazing benefits of their product. So, okay, Harinam, all sinful effects are destroyed. The lowest can be delivered, all diseases can be destroyed. Evil influences of ghosts, demon spirits, and unfavorable planets are nullified. Even jivas in hell can achieve liberation by chanting. And the effects of Namabas are more powerful than the effects from reading the Vedas or visiting the holy places. It's the best kind of activity. And in Kali Yuga, you can even go to Vaikunta, or let's say, in the TV commercial, you can go to heaven. By chanting, Namabas. And then you're watching that commercial, you're like, okay, well, now you're kind of like biting your nails, like, what's the price going to be? It's going to be expensive if it has those kind of benefits. And then, the price comes on the screen and says, the only thing you need is to have some faith in this thing. So that's like bad capitalism, if you think about it. You give out something that's just amazing on all these different levels for basically just whoever thinks that it might work. And actually, in fact, it works even if you don't think that it works. And so it's bad capitalism, but that's the whole thing of Krishna. The nature of Krishna is that he's just pure mercy. And so that this is the form of his mercy, is that if you just take his name in whatever way you take it, there's going to be some benefit from it for sure. And the more purely you take it, the more incredible the benefit is. But anybody who chants, even accidentally, is going to have some kind of benefit. So, you know, that would be, yeah, anyway. And now I'm going to show you guys the Shudhanam chart that I put together, which basically shows, oh, there's chat something. Asat Trishna, that's right. That's the taste for, or like desire for, material things. Thanks, Shamananda. Okay, so then, that's weird. I'm trying to share a screen, but it's giving me this. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the reason I wanted to, do you guys see it okay? Krishna Kumari, thumbs up if you can see it. Okay, great. So the reason I wanted to clarify this is because there's a lot of confusion about Namabas and Nama Aparad, like what is the difference? And so basically, I think the clearest way to think about it overall is that the Shudhanam and there's Namabas, and that's it. And within Namabas, there's Nama Aparad. But basically, Namabas is any form of Shudhanam that is covered by some kind of material conditioning. And then when it gets to the lowest, like the biggest possible conditioning, then it becomes Namaparad. So that's one way of looking at it. But so then let's look at this. So within Namabas, there's basically, you could say, three main categories of different types of Namabas. And so the incidental Namabas is like, this is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, of like people chanting without meaning to be devotees or without meaning to worship. It's just completely incidental. And like, I'm just quickly going to go through these different examples. So the unintentional type of chanting is, you say, like, for example, there's that famous example of Ajamil. You know, he meant to call out to his son, whose name was Narayan. And because of that, because of that, he was saved from going to hell, because the name is inherently powerful, because Krishna and his name are one. So that's unintentional. You're not at all intending to show respect to God or anything like that. The parihasa type of namabas is you joke, you make a joke, like my Guru Maharaj always gives the example of making, well, it's not exactly making fun, but anyway, you make some kind of joke that has the Hare Krishnas in it or something, like, or there's some name of God, or like Prabhupada used to tell those Gopal jokes. So the main character's name is Gopal. So that would be like joking mood. And then Stobha is derision. So that could be like you make fun of the devotees when you see them on. Like, I always remember, I was already a devotee at that point, but I was kind of, I couldn't surrender. I was kind of like a fringe devotee. And so we went on tour to Europe. And I mean, a punk tour is like about as tamasic as you can get. I mean, and so it was a very tamasic environment. But so then we were in Prague, and then all of a sudden in the middle of the square, this huge devotee party comes through chanting Harinam. And I was like, oh, my heart is like burst. But I was with all these like atheist punks with the crew that I was with. And one of them started like jumping around and clapping her hands and just laughing at the devotee. She didn't know I was a devotee. And that I was like, oh, wow, like she actually I was like angry about it at the same time. And then, but I was also thinking like, good, you know, she did actually get some sukriti from deriding the devotees. And then the last example of this incidental type of namabas is disrespect or hela. And so you can see, if you look at the gradation, it goes from more pure type of incidental namabas to less pure, because unintentional, there's no bad intention, but and it ends up in like disrespect. So somebody can say, God, I hate you, Hare Krishnas, or I hate you, devotee, or whatever, I hate you, Krishna worshippers, or something. That is actually a form of namabas. And then then we move on to the pratibimba and shraddha namabas. This is where it gets a little tricky. So Bhaktivinoda says that there's two types of intentional namabas, and those two types are pratibimba namabas and chaya namabas. And I'll explain to you a little later why I put the chaya namabas in these parentheses. But so that's the first kind of breakdown. So pratibimba means a reflection, and chaya means like a dim, just like diffused light, but it's the direct light. Reflection is reflecting out of some other object. And so I was thinking of a good, I like these similes and metaphors. So here's what I was thinking about. Like, so, okay, so there's some dude in Finland, for example. You know, in Finland, they're so crazy that they actually go swim in the ice, in the hole in the ice. So you're there, and there's that hole in the ice, and you see the reflection of the sun on the surface of the water in the hole, and you mistake that for the actual sun, and you want to approach it or whatever, and you dive in the hole, and then you end up being stuck under the ice. And so you can see how, like, trying to go towards the sun, the warmth of the sun, but when it's the reflection, is actually you go in the opposite direction, and you end up in this ice cold water under the ice. And so this is how basically Bhaktivinoda Thakur, without mentioning holes in the ice, talks about pratibimba namabas, that it's basically the Mayavadi tendency, or the tendency to impersonalize God, but trying to reach that state of impersonal Brahman by chanting is like diving in a hole in the ice in search of the sun, because you think you're going after it, but you're actually going in the very opposite direction. And that's the reason why Bhaktivinoda uses some very heavy language about Mayavad in Harinama Cintamani, because he's basically trying to caution devotees that be very careful, because it looks like the real thing. It's a reflection of the actual thing, but it's going to get you in the opposite direction. And Shraddha Namabas, or the Chaya Namabas, means that you believe in Krishna and you chant, but you still have the mist and the clouds. So you still have ignorance in your heart, and you still have anarthas in your heart, but at least you believe in the concept of Krishna, as it is, as he is described in the scripture. So that's Shraddha Namabas, and that Bhaktivinoda makes the point is the only real type of Namabas that actually leads to Prem Bhakti. You can chant Pratibimba till your face goes blue, but you will not ever achieve Krishna Nam, Shudhanam, or Krishna Prem through Pratibimba Namabas. Whereas through Shraddha Namabas, you will actually eventually reach that point. So, and if anybody wants to get this chart, just send me an email, or send a message on Messenger or something. I'll send it to you. Okay, moving on. And there's a very nice quote, right? It's just a direct quote from the Harinama Cintamani. It says, though the person at Namabas stage does not know the full glory of the holy name, realization will come, for the very nature of the name is that it gives realization of itself. And that, of course, what that means is that the only way to clear these clouds and mist is by chanting, like continuous chanting, basically. And that's another reason why this metaphor of the sun is so fitting, because the sun is the very thing that burns away the clouds and the mist in nature, or in the case of Namabas and Shudhanam. Oh, look at that. Madan Gopal is on the line. I'll absolutely send it to Madan Gopal. Thank you. He just sent me a message saying that send me the chart, please. That was nice. So to just kind of summarize the whole thing, Bhaktivinoda says it's really as simple as avoiding Mayavadis and their company at any cost, and serving real devotees who chant Suddha Nama. And that will in itself purify you from all the anarthas and the misconceptions. And so then that's basically it for the Namabas chapter. And the next chapter is chapter 4, which is the first offense. And I have another chart for the 10 offenses, but let's see how many we can come up with just from memory. Who's gonna start? You can write it in the chat or just speak up if you want. I will, in the meantime, look for the chart. Who knows the first aparad, Namaparad?
Sadhu Ninda.
There you go. Very good. And then, actually, I think that's a good start. We'll just show the things. It's going to take too long. But 10 points to Shamananda. Here we have it. 10 offenses to the holy name. So I'll just read these through just to, get memorize them and think about these. So 1, blasphemy or criticism of Vaishnavas. 2, considering that other living entities such as the Devotees are independent of Krishna. 3, disrespecting the Guru. 4, disrespecting scriptural authority or the Vedas. 5, interpreting the meaning of the name and thinking that the glories of the name are imaginary. 6, committing sinful activity on the strength of the holy name. 7, giving the holy name to the unfaithful who are not ready to accept it. 8, comparing the holy name to karma or material pious activity. 9, inattention while chanting the holy name. That one, to me personally, is by far the most relevant at this point. 10, remaining without attachment to the holy name, even though one knows the greatness of the name due to attachment to the material identity of me and mine. Well, actually, 9 and 10 are competing in my mind over the most profound one, but both of them are pretty important. So the chapter 4 is all about Sadhu Ninda, or disrespecting the sadhus. And Haridas starts this chapter by just describing the qualities of a sadhu that I mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And I don't know, I very much just like reciting these different qualities and like thinking about like what kind of a person is somebody who has all these qualities. So let me just read some of these out, and you can think about what kind of a person it would be who would have all these qualities. So a real sadhu is merciful, tolerant, equal-minded, truthful, pure, engaged in helping all humanity, intelligent. It has intelligence that's free from lust. He's sense-controlled, devoid of the concept of ownership, mild, clean, regulated in all habits, peaceful, disinterested in material affairs, patient, steady, surrendered exclusively to Krishna, not negligent of his duties, very grave, not wanting honor, respecting other living entities, skillful, without the cheating propensity or hypocrisy, knowledgeable of the scriptures. So, I mean, a sadhu is like an ubermensch. If you know the Nietzsche terms by Nietzsche, it's like this uber person, really. That's, I guess, is a sadhu. But right after that, Haridas is very quick to point out that there's 2 types of characteristics of the sadhu. There's the principal and the secondary, or the marginal. And really the only principal characteristic of a sadhu is exclusive devotion to Krishna. And all the other ones either follow, or if they are not immediately there, it shouldn't matter almost. Like really that is the point. that there's a cause and effect, and only one of these qualities is the cause, and the others are effects of that exclusive devotion. And also Haridas makes the point, and it's fitting that it comes from the mouth of Haridas, who was born outside of the Varnashram system. He says that the Varnashram, different positions or statuses in the Varnashram system, they have nothing to do with who can be a devotee. And it's the only qualification is the depth of faith in Harinam and the depth of faith in Krishna. And so at this point, of course, there's that famous verse, Apichet Suduracharo, from the Bhagavad Gita, that basically saying that even if a person has very bad qualities, if he's or she is exclusively devoted to me, then he's or she is to be considered the best of the sadhus. And this, you do have to admit, I will admit openly, oops, I'm just, hold on, still sharing here. Okay, sorry. So, I will openly admit that this can be hard to accept. There have been some devotees in the international Gaudiya circles who have done a lot of amazing service, and they have been direct disciples of Prabhupada, and they've done absolutely horrendous things at the same time from the materialistic point of view, or from the material point of view. And so basically what the Gita verse is saying is even they should be considered sadhus. And I think that's as far as I want to take it here, because it's a very controversial thing and can evoke a lot of feelings, especially from those who have been abused by people like devotees like this. But just to think about the implications of what a heavy statement this actually is about the purity of Krishna and the holy name. But of course, then Haridas does quickly make the point that if somebody is completely pure, then they can't have actual sin or actual bad qualities in their heart, because the name completely purifies everything. But at the same time, even if you have well, anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead here. I'm getting too excited about this idea. So let's see, where am I? So yeah, he makes the point that some traces, if you there's a time when some of the traces of those sinful activities or bad traces of bad qualities are still lingering in your chitta, in your awareness or your psychophysical, what would you call it, psychophysical package. But it's just a matter of time that they're going to be cleared away. And that's really materialistically minded people can often, not everybody, of course, but they can easily I've seen this. And actually, I was like this myself before I became a devotee. There's this desire to find fault in devotees because they seem like they're so holy, and who they think they are, they're better. So then there's this intense scrutiny to try to find fault in people who are dedicated to a spiritual path by the materialistically minded people. And so that's what Haridas points out too, that when the materialists see a trace of sin or bad behavior in a otherwise saintly person, they hyper focus on that and start criticizing the sadhu, and that's a form of sadhu ninda for sure. And even as us as devotees, because we are mixed devotees at the stage we're at, we actually have to guard ourselves from that tendency, because obviously we have materialistic tendencies, and this is I would say probably a pretty big materialistic tendency is to find fault, especially in the people who are more pure, I think. So, and that's due to the envy in the heart. The more envious we are, the more we want to find fault in the people who are above us, right? Because envy wants to pull everybody else below us, below ourselves. So it's very good to be aware of this part, this aspect of sadhu ninda, or disrespecting the sadhus in our own hearts. And yeah. Here's another nice quote, direct quote. The person who humbly takes shelter of Krishna, humbly sings Krishna's name, and thinks himself to be the lowest rascal is the real sadhu. Knowing himself to be lower than a blade of grass, considering himself like a tree of tolerance, not expecting honor for himself and giving honor to all other living entities, he chants the name and attains attraction for Krishna. So again, it's the humility that really shelters us from sadhu ninda, and this not thinking too much of ourselves, which is pretty much impossible for anybody who's materially conditioned, really, because the nature of material conditioning is that we think that we're the center of everything. So if you think, have that like faulty abhiman, or this sense of being the controller, and so because you think that you're in charge and that you are the center of everything that goes around you, you're just acting out of this certain paradigm, which we can't see ourselves, that is completely faulty because we're covered by ignorance. Anyway, moving forward, Haridas says there's 4 types of sadhu ninda, and one of them comes from caste, or like social standing, really. So if a sadhu is, from a humble family or something, then you hold it against them. The second one is previous sins or faults committed in this life. So if you had a very sinful past, then people hold it against you based on that. And this is kind of part of what's somewhat happening in the devotee scene. Like some devotees did bad things 40 years ago, and many people still very much hold it against them, other devotees. Then there's the unpremeditated act of sin. You do something that you didn't intend to, but it's sinful nonetheless. That's the third type of sadhu ninda. So you get criticized for doing an unintentional act of sin. Or then when some of these slight traces of the previous sinful habits are still in your chitta, or in your kind of like personality, you get criticized for that. And personally, I have to say that is something that I fall prey to sometimes. I in all honesty, that is one of the hardest things for me in this avoiding sadhu ninda. So then the question comes, like, how does this sadhu ninda develop? And Haridas is very clear that it develops from association with asat sangha, which means like non-devotee association. And this is another hard topic. I mean, I could probably talk a whole full hour about this, about what a difficult topic this is in the world that we live in right now, because it's not very difficult for me, to be honest with you, because I'm mostly just in Audarya and I don't see anybody else than my wife and Guru Maharaj, but generally, like, so there's so many injunctions in the Gaudiya scriptures about avoiding non-devotee association, and it starts very quickly to secular normal people. It starts especially when there's no like society is not, what's the right word, stratified in a way that it was in the in the Varnashram system, where there's a kind of like a box for every type of person in a way. Like right now, the idea is that everybody is equal, really. Like everybody has the equal inalienable rights. And there's a lot, and I'm not at all saying that that's a bad thing, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of good to the modern system. But the problem comes when there's this really hardcore foundational idea that everybody is equal on every level almost, or that we should at least act like everybody's equal on every level, this idea of avoiding non-devotee association starts looking like, are you guys some like Amish or something? Like you're just these like Luddites who want to like get stuck in some past and try to recreate some time in history that's long gone. Aggressive. What's wrong with you guys? But I think really, at least for me, the way to really make sense of this in terms of my own conditioning as a 21st century human being in the West is that you approach it from the yoga philosophy side, not from this like societal, like society should be, broken down in these and these parts, and you're Sudra, so why don't you go and clean the toilets or whatever it is. Instead, you approach it from the yoga philosophy side, like just observe your own mind and be extremely aware of what different things, how they affect your mind. I don't remember if I'm repeating myself, but for me, it's always really interesting to spend a long time in Audarya, completely isolated pretty much. And then I have to go to my mother-in-law's somewhat, quite a bit, because she's getting older and she needs help and stuff. So I go to the Bay Area, which is like, that's the Silicon Valley. It's like the the heart of the secular world in some ways, the tech world, the liberal ideas, the whole package is there. But not only that, but just like they live like normal lives. We do not live normal lives. And so it's really kind of like this litmus test for me to see so clearly what it does to my psyche. And a lot of times it's not good. It's not good at all. And so this is really the angle to come at it. It's like, okay, so like, why do you have to avoid devotee association? Well, non-devotee association. Just try to see how it affects your thinking and whether it starts making you think less and less about Krishna or not when you associate more with non-devotees. And of course, the thing is, there's plenty of people who are really good-hearted people, but they're not like devotees, like they don't have the card. But that's, I think, a different thing. If you have very kind of like religious or spiritual people who are not envious and not proud, I really can't see what, in my opinion, at least, I should ask my Guru Maharaj, and I will actually after this talk, but there doesn't seem to be any reason to avoid that kind of association. In fact, it's good to relate with people like that. So really, it comes down to just observe how different circumstances and different association affects your mind. And since it's really easy for me to see how much it affects things when I'm completely isolated from people and then I go out, it's every time I go back to the Bay Area, I'm just blown away by how extremely impressionable the chitta is. Like we see everything, we take it in, and every single thing we see or experience actually affects the sum total of our consciousness and the quality of our consciousness. And a nice, like a real, you could say almost scientific proof of that in some ways is hypnosis. Because if somebody gets hypnotized really deeply, the hypnotizer can pull out almost any memory from that person, which means that it is stored somewhere, even in terms of like the material idea of storing memories in the brain. What to speak of the way the yoga philosophy sees storing these impressions or what did you win your second birthday, at your second birthday party? Like this happened to my dad, and they will, you remember, although of course, like consciously have absolutely no idea what it is. So every kind of impression, be it mental or like sensory, you will actually remember it on some level. And so this, I think, is why, in a nutshell, why it's absolutely crucial to avoid association in a way, like if you want to make steady progress. Of course, we can't always do it, and we shouldn't become like paranoid, or what's the word, like neurotic about it either. Like, okay, we just have to accept it, that things are going to affect us in a certain way. We might have to chant some extra rounds sometimes to scrub the mind. But it's, I guess what I also want to say is, it's not this like 10 commandments kind of rule, like if you do this, you go to hell, you know, if you associate with non-devotees, you're going to go to hell for sure. It's more like, you are free to do whatever you want, but here's what we know from experience. If you want to progress in your chanting and progressively purify your mind, certain things like association is extremely critical to how fast you purify yourself. And so you can't, I'm going to say one more thing, then I'm going to move forward. But one thing is that you can't superficially cut off your association. If you're attached to certain people who don't happen to be devotees, you can't artificially, cut it off and just like act like you don't care or whatever. It has to be kind of organic and progressive and kind of reasonable, I would say. And if you don't want to cut off that association, then you certainly shouldn't, because these things, I strongly believe that these things should not be forced, internally or externally. So, yeah, but let me just quickly say, Bhaktivinoda Thakur breaks down non-devotee association to association with inappropriate association with the opposite sex, or, in the worldly, the secular sense, association with whoever you're attracted to. It has to be somewhat curbed so that your desires don't get the best of you. And then associating with those devoid of faith, which Bhaktivinoda breaks into Mayavadis, pretenders, and atheists. Yeah, I think I'm kind of running out of time here, but just quickly, Bhaktivinoda also mentions that it's important to learn to differentiate between the different levels of devotees, namely, because then there's less chance that you will commit sadhu ninda or disrespecting a sadhu, because you know who is where, and then you behave towards them accordingly. In the Bhagavatam, there's this important verse about describing how a Madhyam Adhikari gives mercy to the innocent and makes friendship with the people who are on the same level spiritually as him or her, and then avoids the envious and gives respect and service to the ones who are above him. And so in that way, Bhaktivinoda really emphasizes it's extremely important for us to try to reach that Madhyam Adhikari stage, because then we can discriminate properly, and that will kind of block us from doing this sadhu ninda, committing this offense of disrespecting the spiritual people. And also he makes the point, which this was actually came as a bit of a surprise to me, but Bhaktivinoda says that at the stage of Madhyam Adhikar, you start chanting the Shudhanam, the pure name. And that's another reason why you really want to try to strive towards the Madhyam Adhikari stage progressively. So then he wraps up this chapter, which is also going to wrap up this talk, by saying that the remedy, so throughout these 10 offenses, in the end, Haridas Thakur always says what the remedy for this offense is, because after all, it is like a manual for chanting. So it has to have procedures how to counteract bad things. So Haridas says that the remedy for disrespecting a sadhu is that you fall at their feet, either physically or, allegorically, and you pray for forgiveness, and you like sincerely ask for forgiveness. And because Vaishnavas are very generous by nature and very humble, they'll certainly excuse your offense, whatever it might have been. So I'm going to stop there and ask if you guys have any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for the wonderful class. There's so many great things in here, and just some of the things that I really got. It's so much about faith, or depth of faith, the continuous chanting, that even in the Chaya Namabas that, believe in Krishna, but we still have some ignorance and anartas that are still there, but that we can achieve Suddha Nama. We don't have to have full knowledge, but we have to keep working at that process.
Right.
And, I was thinking about association. And so I'd be really curious to hear what your Guru Maharaj has to say about that, because when I think about, if your goal is kind of the realization and manifestation of our internal identity, and that's the real goal that we have, that we should be really surrounding ourselves with people that have the same, or devotees that have the same goals, and limiting as much of that association. And I don't know if that's right or not, but that's what I would want to know as well, because it seems like such a focused goal. And is it a different place to think about association?
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I really appreciate it that you take notes. That's very nice. I would say I'll ask him after this class, but I've heard him answer this question about non-devotee association many times, and he's very generous in his preaching. And he basically, what he says is, don't become, what's that word? Neurotic. Like, don't become like weird about it. But that he says that it doesn't mean that you associate with somebody if you're in the same space with them or whatever. Like, basically, he says that association means that you share your heart and you open yourself up to being influenced by another person. Mm-hmm. And so that's, on the low level, I think that's probably what he would say. And then on the higher level, that's a good question. I mean, I have heard him say, I think, I will double check with him, but I've heard him say that it depends on how clear you are on your own attraction in terms of your staibhav. And so it probably follows kind of naturally, like the more attracted you actually get to that goal, the more you just want to hang out with the people who are like, oh, I know what you're talking about. Right? Yeah. And so that's probably, maybe it's like a dynamic thing like that, but I'll ask him. I'll let you know next week. I'm not giving a class but I'll give another class. So I'll ask him, and I'll be sure to let you know. Excellent question, though, or both questions. Thank you.
And I'd like a chart too, please.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I think we're friends on Facebook now, so I will send it through Messenger. Great. Anything else?
Haribo.
Haribo.
Just a small comment that the list of anartas that I was reading was also from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but from Bhajan Rahasya.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made that clear. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's interesting that he didn't use that same list. I think they're written pretty close to each other. I mean, Harinama Cintamani was written 1900. I think Bhajan Rahasya was pretty much right after that or something like that. But it's interesting that he used a little different list there. But thank you for the comment. And I guess if there's nothing else, let's just wrap it up. And like I said, next time it's going to be on the 22nd, I think. So hope to see you then. And